some people ask me to tell about myself a little bit because we don't know each other. So my name is Jolanta and I'm from Poland. I graduated from the intermediate department. And I know with Szymon from Bucharest, and I made first exhibition here in Untitled Prostor. Something went wrong, and I will tell you about, as you know, about Polish contemporary artists. And as you can imagine, it's not really possible to talk about Polish contemporary artists just during one meeting. So I chosen 6 artists I like, and so it's like subjective choice, my subjective choice. So if you have any questions, you can just stop my blah 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 and like ask me a question during the presentation. So I will present 6 artists, and then I will also present some possibilities how to apply for some Polish art residencies if you are interested, and also how to find some information about Polish contemporary art in English on internet. Okay, so I will start with Łukasz Surowiec. He's interdisciplinary artist, it's like in Poland we have something similar to Halupecki, to Cena Halupecki. It's called spojrzenia. Spojrzenia means like the gaze or look or something like that. It's organized in Zachęta. It's like the most important institution in Poland. And this guy was nominated this year for the prize. And he's author of like, let's say, performances, also like installations, usually with some political message. And he's mostly focused on the subject of homeless people in Poland. He works a lot with homeless people, and for example, this is the installation called Cards. It's the result of swap that Surowiec performed in Silesia region, like Katowice, like this region of Poland is quite poor region in Poland, and he swapped the cards, as you can see, with homeless people. So he get these old cards, like this thing that homeless people use to collect some papers or some plastics, whatever. And Surowiec prepared some purpose-made cards for homeless people, because usually they use, I don't know how, like baby carriages, like it's called baby carriages or something like that. You can just go with baby, okay. And he prepared proper carriages, proper cards for homeless people to collect some stuff. And the next project is like Waiting Room. It was the part of his solo exhibition in Bunkier Sztuki. Bunkier Sztuki is one of the most important art institutions in Krakow, or maybe even in Poland. And Waiting Room, it was just part of his exhibition. The whole exhibition was like on the one floor, and in the basement it was the separate performative space, accessible 24 hours for a few weeks or maybe months, I'm not sure. And it was accessible for everyone, especially for homeless people, but not only for homeless, also for some weirdos, I don't know, like the people who wanted to spend some time there. So it was possible to meet with the homeless people like 24 hours per day. It was quite controversial project, of course. And after some times they also prepared some statement, like homeless people prepared some statement, like for example they shouldn't drink alcohol and using drugs, like it's forbidden, and they just prepared this statement by themselves. So usually it was like some parties, the people just played guitars, they were talking, and yeah, and it's important to know that this project was during the winter, so waiting room means like waiting for the spring, waiting for some changes, and Surowiec itself calls his action as a prototype of anarchic spaces, like in which the principles of the social contract have been suspended. It's like kind of social fiction and kind of like imagination about how, like, just imagine that this kind of space could exist like every year in every city in Poland, and what would happen. And for him, art is, it's really interesting that for him art is kind of tool for production of knowledge. He's doing just like some social experiments. And this is also the 30 minutes documentation. Actually, it's a documentary movie. I will show you just like a short fragment. It's called Happy New Year, and it's a project he made in cooperation with homeless people, also from Silesia region, and he prepared it for like 4 years, 3-4 years. He was following with camera homeless people like in an everyday routines, and mostly it's about their home. They built a home with very modest means, as you can imagine, as homeless people. And the movie is about the illegality of this house, because of course it was illegal to build it in some outskirts of the city. And also it's like about how to survive in capitalistic jungle, and how to survive simply the winter. So I will just show you just a very short. You can find this whole, because I wanted to just show you like 5 minutes, because it's like 20 minutes long. You can find it on the internet with English subtitles if you're interested. I think it's... Let's try. Okay, I think it's not going to... Okay, I think it doesn't make sense to wait for the internet connection. I will give you the links like later. You can find some nice artworks with English subtitles. The next artist is Daniel Rycharski. He's working mostly with the subject of Polish peasants and Polish villages. He works with some stereotypes about Polish villages, and also about, he shows some current social and identity problems with Polish countryside. And this is his most famous work is Monument to a Peasant. This is just a trailer, and with like 4 meters long, I don't know, crane, I don't know how to call it, with some sculpture of peasant. And important thing is that this work was like traveling through the Poland like for 1 year or maybe even 1 year and a half, mostly in villages, but also it was in front of Museum of Modern Art in Warsaw. And it's like very nice contrast between it. And also this is a gate he prepared for, because this artist, he's from Krakow, and after graduation he moved to his family countryside, and he started to work there, and he started to work with countrysides, and this is the gate. Firstly, it was in Kurówko. It's like the little village in Poland. And this is the gate, which means there is something you can see the 2 days here, 2 years, and it means like 150 anniversary of the abolition of feudal system. And actually it's very interesting because like in Poland, I don't know how to call it. Okay, so like the history of Poland, it was like written. Like before Second World War, the Polish society was mostly like 90%. It was just peasants, and the history like we learn in high school or whatever, it's the history of like 10% of society, like about the high classes. And this subject of Polish peasants, it's totally forgotten. And this anniversary, for example, it was like also totally forgotten in Poland. Like nobody celebrated, and it was, we don't just talk about it. Maybe because it's like kind of dark side of Polish history. Like Polish feudal system, especially in this eastern part of Poland, like nowadays is Belarus and Ukraine. It was like very bloody and like very, very, very hard, and like we don't really talk about it in Poland. And just like in 5, maybe 10 years ago, left-wing historians, they started to write books about it. So it's like something new in Poland to talk about the feudal system, how bloody it was, and how dark period it was actually. There is one really, really great author, he's called Jan Sowa. I checked it, and you can find it, his papers on the internet in English. He wrote the Polish history from like left-wing perspective, like totally from new perspective. He's really interesting author, and if you want to know something more about Polish history, like from this left-wing perspective, I would recommend you this guy to read some papers about Polish society. He's a sociologist, he's not a historian, but he writes a lot about history. But Daniel Rycharski, he's also LGBT activist, and for example, like he made a lot of works about LGBT rights. And this is, for example, very simple action. This is the documentation of the performance he made in Warsaw. First, he prepared this board. It was he found like little Jesuses, like little I don't know, like metal figurines of Jesus, like from some cemeteries or from some old churches. Then he melted down these little figurines, and from these figurines he prepared the board with the fragment of Bible, like about discrimination and about like we should treat the homosexuals with the respect, and like this is the content of this board. And then he just stayed with this board in front of the church in Warsaw during some Sunday mass. Eva Axelrad, she's a Polish sculptor, and she does mostly objects, installations, sculptures. She was also nominated for that prize this year, like I mentioned before, and she's mostly interested in such subjects like power, control, discipline in the society, and I believe it's very strongly connected with current situation in Poland, and she is inspired by rise of right-wing organizations in Poland and right-wing government, and she's inspired by some current, like riots, demonstrations, and stuff like that. This is like 2015, some sculptures of her. This is a very iconic work. Like this is like one of her most famous sculpture she made. And this is installation which is called Zadyma. It's really hard to translate it, but it's something like, I would say, like riots. And it's constructed from police riot shields. But the interesting thing is that the handles are fixed on both sides of these shields, so it's really hard to state whether it's the police or the demonstrators are on the defensive. So it's like ambivalence work. And this is her last project. She presented for this Spojrzenia Reward. Sztamach is also hard to translate in word. It's a wordplay. Yeah, okay. Sztama in Polish means boys' solidarity, but it's really like it's not possible to translate. But it's like Polish solidarity, boys' solidarity, but also somehow it involves like mutual help each other, something like that. And the word is from German, and in German it means tribe. And the project consists photography, objects, and videos. So it's like very complex project. This is, for example, the object installation. I would say that it's you can see the movement here, the movement of the flag. You are on the demonstrations, and like demonstrator usually doing this movement with flag, and this is just like the this kind of movement with your hand with flag. This object. And also, like I was reading some interviews with her, and she mentioned that like the project was inspired by the recent rise of far-right nationalists in Poland under the current Polish government, and about also the fight itself. It's somehow, I don't know, mythologized. I don't know, it's mythological a little bit, and it's paramilitary groups are popping out everywhere in Poland, and they have fully support of Polish government. It's a lot of paramilitary groups in Poland nowadays. But also, this is I couldn't find the video. It's not available online. This is just a still from video, and you can see that it's in her works also. They are slightly erotic, and combat or fight is perceived by many as part of transition between boyhood and manhood. So sexuality is written into it. This is Jale Bartana. She's not a Polish artist, but I decided to also talk about her. She's Israeli artist, and she represented Poland in 2011 in Venice. And the exhibition was called "And Europe Will Be Stunned." And she prepared 3 movies about very complicated relationship between Polish and Jewish people. It's she called these movies as exercises in political imagination. At first, she created the Jewish Renaissance movement in Poland. This is a manifesto. It was in 3 languages: in Polish, English, and in Jewish language. I'm sorry, I just forgot how to call it. Someone help me.
Hebrew.
Yeah, probably Hebrew, but yeah. And it was a movement, and they created some conferences around Europe. And this movement calls for return 3,300,000 Jews to Poland in order to re-establish the Jewish community in Poland. And this 3,300,000, it's not exactly, let's say more or less, amount of Jewish people who were killed during Holocaust. And this fantasy about the Jewish Renaissance, she presented in her movie Mare Koszmary, which means nightmares. And I will present you just very short fragment of the movie. And the main character is played by Sławomir Siakowski. He's a left-wing, journalist, let's say, and he runs the most important magazine, which is called Krytyka Polityczna. And he plays in all 3 movies, it's a trilogy. And one important thing is that the movie was shot in Warsaw in Olympic Stadium, and in 90s it was a place where Asian people, usually Vietnamese, they were selling some clothes or whatever. And now it's totally empty because they ban it, the government or I don't know the city of Warsaw, they ban it's not anymore the market, it's just empty space. So I think that Bartana also she talks not just about Jewish people, but about this relation between the other and the Polish society. As Polish society is like in 96%, it's like homogenic. It's just like Polish people. So it's mostly about this figure of the other.
Żydzi, rodacy, ludzie! Myślicie, że ta stara kobieta, która wciąż śpi pod pierzyną rybki, nie chce was widzieć? Zapomniała o was? Mylicie się! Ona śni o was każdej nocy. Śni i drży ze strachu. Od tej nocy, kiedy was już nie było, a jej matka sięgnęła po waszą pierzynę, nawiedzają ją mary. Mary i koszmary. Tylko wy możecie je przegrać. Niech przy jej łóżku stanie 3 miliony Żydów, których zabrakło w Polsce. I przegoni w końcu te zło. Wracajcie do Polski, do waszego, naszego kraju. Stańcie przy jej łóżku i połóżcie swoje dłonie na tej starej pierzynie, cienkiej jak prześcieradło, z której Bóg dawno już rozwał gard. Połóżcie, mówię wam, swoje ręce na niej i powiedzcie, darujemy ci tę pierzynę. Po co nam ona? Już nie ma w niej pierza, tylko ból. Uleczcie nasze rany, a uleczycie swoje. I będziemy znowu razem. To apel, ale nie apel Polek. To apel dla życia. Chcemy, aby do Polski wróciło 3 miliony Żydów i abyście znowu byli z nami, zamieszkali. Potrzebujemy was. Prosimy, wróćcie.
And the next movie, it's called The Wall and Tower. And it's the documentation of some actions she made in Warsaw, where she invited some Jewish people, also part was Polish, they were Polish, and they built a kibbutz, and it was in style of like architecture style. It was like from 1930, like during the British mandate in Palestine. The Jewish people, they built some kibbutzes. I don't know how to say kibbutzes, let's say. And it was the law that it was forbidden to demolish how it could be in Poland. And actually, I'm reading right now a quite interesting book if you are interested in this subject of like Jewish people. The book of Philip Roth. It's not Polish. It's just digression about this subject, where it's also this idea to move like this political fiction to move Jewish people again to Europe. like right now. It's just decoration about it. Okay. Janek Simon is also quite interesting artist. He's sociologist. He's a conceptual artist, and occasionally he's a curator. He's interested in anarchism and do-it-yourself practices. For example, he's doing very simple conceptual works. For example, reverse theft. It was just very simple action when he just bought one can of Coca-Cola, and then he came to another shops and he was paying over and over again for this one can of Coca-Cola. Or a survey of lottery systems. It's just like books about how to win a lottery. And he was just trying to win a lottery, like he was checking these systems, if they works or not. And it's like not really important work of him, but I just I wanted to say about it because he used to run one gallery in Krakow, like artist run space. It was called Goldex Poldex, and actually with the guy, with Jan Sowa, I mentioned before, like this guy who writes about Polish history, they run this gallery together, and one of the system how to win or spend the money for the gallery was like practicing the lottery. So it was just the practice for the gallery, how to win the money for running the gallery. But also, this is a biochemical analysis of the holy water. Like he made some analysis of the holy water from different churches in Poland. For example, how many bacteria there are and what kind of bacteria you can find in holy water in church. And it's also homemade electronic watch. It's like I mentioned about these do-it-yourself practices, and he decided to learn like just through the internet, and it was also like it was more like performance, and the result is an object. The performance was like he was learning about how to build your own electronic watch, and it's the result of 2 months of internet research. And it's also like I mentioned that he works also as a curator. Polish Year in Madagascar. He prepared a Polish Year in Madagascar totally by himself. Like it looks like some Polish institute could make it, but it was also kind of like fiction. So you have to know just like that Madagascar in 1930s was like Polish people wanted to make a colony in Madagascar. It's not a joke. And so he went there, and after like 2 weeks of staying in Madagascar, he prepared a very simple exhibition that it was like just in his suitcase. Like he just went there with just one suitcase of some artworks, but it was like he didn't show any Polish artists. He just showed artists from Central Europe. For example, like Vlamnanka from Bucharest or Gumaguar from Czech. And it was surprising that all these works somehow, even if there is not even one Polish artist, these artworks, they were somehow about Polish reality, like somehow, like for example, about war in Iraq. It was at the time it was like very important topic, or social stratification. Or increase of nationalist movement after 1989, Oscar Dawicki is the guy who is like a little older generation than the previous artists, but he's kind of iconic, so I decided to show you because he's like very, very well known in Poland. He's mostly performance artist, and his trademark is the blue brocade jacket. He always wears this blue jacket. But also he's besides performance, he also makes some objects. For example, he used to work for some advertising agency, and he just placed his very micro portraits in some commercials, and during the exhibitions, you could just watch with the glass, like I don't know how to call it, like the glass that make the picture bigger, and observe, just look for where is his face around. This is also documentation of one object he made. It's called Fruit of Anxiety, Vegetable of Calm, and he planted a bean in an empty bottle of a very strong antidepressant, usually used in treating alcoholism, and the bean was like growing during the exhibition, and like it was successful, like bean was okay. And about his performances, for example, he's very often he makes works about artwork, about art market, and this is example of it. It's like in the you will see. I don't have to talk.
Szanowni Państwo, mam niewątpliwą przyjemność zaoferować Wam dzisiaj rzecz szczególną. Jest to obraz olejny autorstwa Rafała Bujnowskiego, namalowany w 2004 roku. Obraz z serii skóry wielkości 40 na 60 cm. Te doskonałe wymiary sprawiają, że obraz pasuje niemal wszędzie. Można go powiesić w salonie, w sypialni, w jadalni. Doskonale mieści się we wszystkich wnętrzach Waszego domu. Jest ani za duży, ani za mały. Po prostu w sam raz.
To naprawdę okazja! Obraz Rafała Bujnowskiego, przedstawiający skórę królika na białym tle. Olej na płótnie o wymiarach 40 na 60 cm za jedyne 7000 euro.
Ale zacznijmy od początku. Otóż 2 lata temu Rafał Bujnowski namalował serię 12 obrazów przedstawiających wyprawione królicze skóry. Namalował je z myślą, by wymienić się nimi na pracę innych artystów i zbudować w ten sposób unikalny posag wiano uwite ze sztuki współczesnej dla swojej córeczki Mileny. Jednym z artystów zaproszonych do takiej transakcji miałem przyjemność być ja sam. Bez chwili wahania przystałem na tę propozycję i jako przedmiot rewanżu wybrałem jeden ze swoich obrazów z serii 10-lecie malarstwa 2 pod tytułem Alternaria Remota. Obraz przedstawiający zepsute, zagrzybione, pokryte pleśnią płótno. Tak oto na drodze artystyczno-towarowej wymiany wszedłem szczęśliwie w posiadanie tego obrazu.
Rafał Bujnowski świat usłyszał, kiedy wraz z grupą kilku młodych artystów krakowskich stworzył grupę Grupa została uznana za jedno z najważniejszych zjawisk polskiej sceny artystycznej końca lat 90. Przecież dokładnie nie była jednak ani typowo malarstwo, ani też nie była typowym opartym. Właściwie to, co uprawiali artyści związani z tą grupą, należało określić jako refleksję konceptualną na temat malarstwa, na temat jego granic, relacji między obrazem a tym, co przedstawiamy. Kupując zatem dzieło Rafała Bujnowskiego, kupuje się w zasadzie 2 dzieła. ciekawe sztuki, znakomity obraz oraz dzieło konceptualne, które na temat tego obrazu opowiada.
Życie bez odrobiny szczęścia nie wydaje się mieć zbyt wiele sensu. Dlaczego to takie optymistyczne? Gdyby o zgrozo znalazł się pośród Państwa jeszcze ktoś, kto tego nie wie, to pozwolę sobie jedynie przypomnieć, że Rafał Bojnowski jest jednym z najbardziej znanych i cenionych polskich współczesnych malarzy. Każdy szanujący się kolekcjoner zabiega o jego pracę.
And so on and so on. Like, can you imagine the rest? And Oskar Debicki is also, he was a part of art group, which was called Azoro, I think it was like in the beginning of 2000, something like that. It's called Supergroup Azoro, and they made video performances, and also it was mostly about art market, about art, like Polish art scene. And this is like portrait with a curator, and I decided to show you because I just realized before this lecture that there is one guy you should probably know from Prague. Maybe you will recognize him.
Coś takiego, czego nie było jeszcze.
Tak.
A może by rzeczywiście coś na przykład takiego konia jak Żyd.
Nie no, to było już, było.
To może by nawet kwadrat jakiś.
Nie, to było też.
oczywiście.
Niego można by na przykład nic nie zrobić.
To też,
Ale to już nie robisz.
A może by właśnie zrobić coś zrobić takiego, żeby...
Nie, trzeba coś zrobić, bo już nie można nic zrobić.
No to oczywiście, ale chcę się obciąć.
No nie jest to.
Ale to już było, tak. A gdyby tak pociachać, pokaleczyć, tak?
Nie, no to
Do krwi, no to świetne jest, ale...
można by się nawet zabić, ale to też już było. Na szczęście.
A może
Nie.
A nie. Też już było. Co było? No, myślałem, żeby utworzyć pewną akcję, ale nie wchodząc,
to było.
stworzyć interakcję. Akcję i nie wchodząc w interakcję. Tak, ale to było, także właściwie zostawmy było.
Także transmisja jest telewizyjna albo internet, tak tylko tam przekaz.
Internet to był internet. A transmisja też był. Żeby tak generalnie tak wziąć, nie rzeźby, obrazy, nie wideo, które wziąć przedmioty gotowe, różne takie sznurek na przykład, wziąć drątu, kulkę właśnie, tak to zrobić, powiązać, no. Może coś kupić w sklepie pokazać. W sklepie pokazać? Sobie to pokazać w galerii. A w galerii zbudować taką drugą, mniejszą, tylko teraz zrobić taką brzoszek, taki ale zaglądasz, a potem wchodzisz i rusza to w środku, nie?
Ale nie, to się naruszało, ja nie wiem, to się naruszało. Nie było. Było, pomalowane było.
Właśnie tak, kolorami.
To było. Parę.
A może z wiatru coś, wiatr, słuchaj, wiatr.
No co?
No na przykład, no tak, wykorzystać wiatr. Nie, z wiatru, z ziemi, nie to było. Z ziemi. Może to musiało. Może było.
Jak były rzeźby z dymu już, to wiatru z piasku.
A może by wyczerpywać bateryjki? Rozwiązanie działania. Nie znam. Tak?
Znaczy, artystyczne używanie prądu.
Nie, no bardzo po prostu wyczerpywanie bateryjki. Może nie bateryjki.
Ale to akumulatory działają do traktorów. No.
Jak w naturze może coś zrobić, tak. Coś złamać, ingerencja.
Na przykład przyspawać motor do dachu.
Albo rower.
This is the name of the gallery who represents Oskar Dawicki last in Warsaw. Also, I wanted to present you a movie, like a proper movie, which was about Oskar Dawicki. It was made by Łukasz Duda. He's one of the main curator in Museum of Modern Art in Warsaw, and he made a video about a movie about Oskar Nowicki, and it's also important that one of the tutor, the master of Oskar Nowicki was Zbigniew Wapechowski. He's like the very important performer artist like from 70s, 80s, and he's kind of iconic in Poland, and he's also the part of the movie, like his performances. You will see like the old footages from his performances. And one more thing is like also it's interesting that during this movie you can see like some hidden artworks by Oskar Nowicki, like some objects. Like for example, this snowman here is also his objects he made. Like it's made out of snow, and it's like. Duda, like the guy who made this movie, this curator, also last year he made one movie about Polish artists, about Wojtek Bunkowski and Zuzanna Bartoszek. It's a couple of artists, and Wojtek Bunkowski, he's the musician mostly, but maybe not mostly, but he's well known for his music, for his animations. He combines drawings and poetry, and I will also show you just a short trailer of that movie. Maybe you can find it like maybe in 1 year with some English subtitles.
Myślałam się dzisiaj, że strzelam ludzi. Grzechów trawy. Miałam słonkiem. Nie było się ran postrzałowych, tak jak w prawdziwym świecie. Chciałam szukać.
is my presentation. Okay. And like this couple, just want to show you some stuff what they are doing. Wojtek Bąkowski, like I mentioned, he does some animations and like drawings with some poetry, and his girlfriend Zuzanna Bartoszek, she's a very young artist, and she's kind of like Instagram superstar in Poland. So you can follow her because she puts a lot of her artworks, like some drawings, mostly drawings, but she also writes some poetry. She does some performances. I don't know, she does some voguing and like doing some fashionable stuff. And yeah, this is like kind of drawings she makes. And in the end, I wanted to talk about some Polish art residencies. Like the main website about some like possibilities is artresidencies.pl. And there you can find some annonces about like current residencies. And here they are like the institutions which they have like some they invite like every year some artists, and you can apply for them also. Like Galeria Sztuki Współczesnej in Słupsk, it's like in the north of Poland. Centrum Kultury Zamek in Poznań, it's like Zamek, it's like Hrad. And it's like they are looking for some mostly for some site-specific projects for this place, like from Hrad. Center of Sculpture in Orońsko, it's like little city. Mostly they are mostly focused on sculpture, but it's like really good institution, and it's really good to cooperate with them. BWA Bydgoszcz, BWA actually it's like the whole chain of art galleries in Poland. Like in every city there is a BWA gallery. BWA it's Biuro Wystaw Artystycznych, so it means like the office of like artistic exhibitions. And it's like city gallery, something like city gallery, but in a lot of like cities these galleries are really good. And a lot of good curators work with BWA. And Galeria Arsenał w Białymstoku. Białystok is like in the east part of Poland, and they are looking especially for Central Eastern European artists. And also, if you want to find some informations about Polish art in English, this is like Art Museum. This is like the website of Museum of Modern Art in Warsaw, and they collect some videos, and very often they are like with English subtitles, so you can easily find some movies, some videos of Polish artists with English subtitles. Contemporary Links, it's a magazine. Like the main one is magazine Szum. Maybe you know it, but it's like unfortunately it's just in Polish. Contemporary Links, it's just in English, and Culture.pl, it's like about about mainstream arts in English. So it's like not about some it's like mainstream art about the biggest events in Poland and about Polish artists abroad. Right. So I'm talking already like 1 hour. So this is it. And also, if you want to stay here like for longer a little bit, I also prepared some videos and music made by visual artists from Poland, like visual artists who make music. It's just very short playlist, but it can be like a background for our ideal conversation. So. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you.
I also put Zuzanna Bartoszek like Instagram, so it's like she's doing like this kind of drawings. and she often mixes it with poetry. Yeah, but she also, you know, she just like dressed up in like very crazy. This is Wojciech Bonkowski, for example, and yeah. So yeah, and she's a model also sometimes. And this is this art residency's website. It's not a lot of Polish residency, unfortunately, but still you can try. And this is the website of Art Museum, when you can find this collection, and you can find here some videos with English subtitles. Yeah. Okay, thanks.